I had always been a fan of dark fantasy games, so when I stumbled across Eclipsed Realms in a late night browsing session, I was intrigued. The game had everything I loved: an immersive world, a chilling atmosphere, and a story that promised to be both haunting and gripping. Little did I know it would be a descent into a nightmare I couldn't escape. From the moment I booted up the game, I was hooked. The graphics were stunning, the sound design eerie, and the storyline captivating. I played for hours on end, losing myself in the twisted landscapes and battling grotesque creatures. The protagonist, a shadowy figure named Thorn, seemed almost alive with his detailed animations and haunting voice. The first few days were uneventful. I progressed through the game, unlocking new areas and uncovering hidden secrets. But then, one evening, something strange happened. I was playing alone in my dimly lit room. The rest of the house was silent. As Thorn traversed a particularly dark and foreboding forest, he paused and turned to face the screen directly.
Paul.
He said my name, his voice low and gravelly. I blinked, staring at the screen in disbelief. I hadn't entered my name anywhere in the game. It had to be a coincidence, a fluke. But then he spoke again.
Paul, you must listen to me.
My heart raced. Was this some sort of elaborate Easter egg? I leaned closer to the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard.
Your family, your friends, they don't understand you. They hold you back.
Thorn continued, his eyes boring into mine.
You need to show them who you really are. Teach them a lesson.
A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't part of the game I had been playing. I tried to dismiss it as some bizarre programming glitch, but the words echoed in my mind long after I had turned off the computer for the night. Over the next few days, Thorn's messages became more frequent and more disturbing. He only spoke when I was alone, his voice coaxing and insistent. He described in detail the terrible things I should do to my family and friends. Hurtful, violent acts that made my stomach churn. I stopped playing during the day, afraid someone might overhear the macabre instructions. Despite my growing fear, I couldn't tear myself away from the game. It was as if Thorn had a hold on me, pulling me deeper into his twisted world. I started to avoid my family. My interactions with friends grew strained, and I was constantly on edge, haunted by Thorn's voice whispering in my ear. One night, after an especially horrifying encounter with Thorn, I decided I had had enough. I couldn't let this game destroy my life. Determined to rid myself of its influence, I navigated to the game's folder on my computer, intent on deleting it once and for all. As I moved to drag the folder to the trash, my screen flickered and went black. A high-pitched whine filled the room, and the smell of burning electronics wafted from my computer. Panicking, I yanked the power cord from the wall, but it was too late. My computer was fried. The screen was permanently black now. Breathing heavily, I stared at the ruined machine, my mind reeling. I had hoped to simply delete the game and be done with it, but now I was left with nothing. My computer was destroyed, and the last words I heard from Thorn echoed in my mind.
You cannot escape me, Paul.
In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that Thorn was somehow still with me. I avoided my family and friends even more, terrified that the dark influence of the game might push me to do something unthinkable. Be careful what you let into your life. especially when it comes to the digital world. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed, and some nightmares, once unleashed, can never be contained.
Subscribe.
It all started with the radio, a station that had been long forgotten, buried in the static of AM frequencies, suddenly came to life, broadcasting strange numbers and unsettling frequencies. At first, it was just a curiosity, a late-night novelty for insomniacs and conspiracy theorists. But soon it became something more. I first heard about it from a colleague at work, Jim. He was one of those guys who loved diving into the weird and unexplained. "You gotta check this out," he said one morning, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "This station, it's broadcasting numbers. Some kind of code, and people are trying to decipher it." I laughed it off, more focused on my overflowing inbox than on mysterious radio signals. But later that night, as I laid in the bed, sleep eluding me, I decided to give it a listen. I tuned my old radio to the frequency Jim had mentioned, AM 1313. Static, and then faintly a voice.
4, 9, 2, 1, 7.
The numbers droned on, interspersed with a strange low-frequency hum. I felt a shiver run down my spine, but I couldn't turn it off. There was something hypnotic about it. The next morning, I woke up feeling off. My head pounded, and a wave of nausea washed over me as I tried to get out of bed. I called in sick, something I rarely ever did, and I spent the day in a feverish haze. But the numbers stayed with me, echoing in my mind. By evening, it wasn't just the numbers. I heard the radio, clear as day, inside my head.
Drive to the edge of town,
It urged. The voice was insistent, almost desperate.
Drive to the clearing and the pasture.
I tried to shake it off, but the compulsion was overwhelming. Weak and trembling, I stumbled to my car and drove. The streets were eerily empty, as if the whole town was under some kind of spell. The radio's instructions were precise, guiding me through back roads and deserted lanes until I reached the clearing. There, under the pale light of the moon, were thousands of others. They looked as sick as I felt. Pale, sweating, eyes glazed with fever. The air was thick with a sense of shared desperation. We all stood in silence, drawn together by the same inexplicable force. As I looked around, trying to make sense of it all, I noticed a line of military vehicles parked along the edge of the clearing. Soldiers moved among the crowd, their expressions grim. One of them, a tall man with a stern face, approached me. "You need to come with us," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "We're here to help." They herded us into a makeshift quarantine area, tents and medical equipment hastily assembled. Doctors in protective gear moved among us, checking vitals and administering treatments. The fever was making it hard to think, but I managed to ask the soldier what was happening. "It's a mind virus," he said, his tone clipped. "A Russian experiment, broadcast through the airwaves. We've been tracking it for weeks, but it's intensified. We're trying to contain it now." A mind virus. The words echoed in my fever-addled brain. It sounded like something out of a sci-fi novel, but here I was, living it. The numbers and the frequencies, they were a weapon, designed to control and compel. The days in quarantine blurred together. The doctors worked tirelessly, trying to find a cure, but the virus was unlike anything they'd ever seen. It wasn't just in our bodies, it was in our minds. A parasite feeding on our thoughts. Some of us got better. The fever broke, the compulsions faded, but others weren't so lucky. They remained in a daze, eyes vacant, minds lost to the signal. When I was finally released, I returned home, but nothing felt the same. The radio was gone, confiscated by the military, but I could still hear that faint echo of those numbers in my mind. The world felt different, more fragile, as if the thin veneer of normalcy could shatter at any moment. When my cat Whiskers went missing, I was devastated. She had been my companion for years, always curling up on my lap during movie nights and greeting me at the door after a long day. I searched the neighborhood, put up flyers, and asked if everyone had seen her, but it was as if she had vanished into thin air. A week passed, and I was losing hope. One evening, as I walked through the dimly lit streets, my eyes landed on a new kebab shop that had recently opened. The sign above the door flickered, casting an eerie glow over the entrance. The place had a strange aura that I found intriguing. My curiosity piqued. I decided to take a closer look. The windows were plastered with colorful posters advertising their unique and exotic menu items. As I peered inside, something caught my eyes. Whiskers' collar. It was hanging on a peg behind the counter, along with other collars, tags, and pet accessories. My heart skipped. I pushed open the door, and the bell above chimed loudly. The owners, a couple with unnerving smiles, greeted me.
Can we help you?
The man asked, his eyes never quite meeting mine. I pointed to the collar. That's my cat's. Where did you get it? The woman's smile faltered for a fraction of a second.
Oh, that? We found it outside. Lots of strays around here.
I didn't believe them, but I nodded and left, unsure about the strange situation that had just taken place. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the collars and the unsettling vibe of the shop. Determined to find out the truth, I decided to sneak in after dark. Around midnight, I returned to the kebab shop. The streets were deserted and the shop was dark. I picked the lock, an old trick I had learned in my youth, and slipped inside, my flashlight cutting through the gloom. The shop was eerily silent, the air thick with the scent of spices and something else. Something metallic. I moved to the back, where I had seen the collars. As I shone my light around, I noticed a computer on a cluttered desk. The screensaver was flickering, and I moved the mouse to access the desktop. My blood ran cold as I read the emails displayed on the screen. They spoke of special ingredients and new additions to the menu. One email in particular caught my eye. It was from the couple, addressed to someone named the supplier.
People are on the menu soon. Make sure the deliveries are discreet.
I scrolled further and found a list of menu items named after people. Each name had a description that made my stomach churn.
Tim's Delight. Tender meat, perfect for skewers.
Before I could process the horror, I heard a faint, familiar sound. A soft meow. My heart skipped a beat. I followed the sound to a small storage room. Pushing the door open, I found Whiskers, huddled in a cage along with other frightened pets. I quickly unlatched the cage, and Whiskers jumped into my arms, purring loudly. Relief washed over me, but I knew we weren't safe yet. As I turned to leave, the man from the shop appeared, a cleaver glinting in his hand. His smile twisted into something monstrous.
Ah, Tim. Just in time. You're the next special on our menu.
Panic coursed through my veins. I backed away, clutching Whiskers tightly. He lunged, but I dodged, sliding past him and sprinting towards the back door. My heart pounded in my ears as I reached the door, only to find it locked. In a desperate move, I kicked the door with all my strength. It didn't budge. The man was getting closer, his steps slow and deliberate. I took a deep breath, braced myself, and drop-kicked the door again. This time, it flew open, setting off a cacophony of alarms. I bolted into the night, Whiskers safely in my arms, the shrill alarms echoing through the empty streets. I didn't stop running until I reached my apartment, my body shaking with adrenaline. I called the cops, and within mere minutes, sirens filled the air. The kebab shop was raided, and the horrifying truth was exposed. The owners were arrested, and the disturbing contents of their emails were revealed to the public. The next few days were a blur. I was hailed as a hero for uncovering the sinister operation, but the nightmares haunted me. I kept thinking about the other lost pets and the fate they might have suffered if I hadn't intervened. Always trust your instincts, and never ignore the signs of something being terribly wrong. And most importantly, never give up hope, even in the darkest of times. There's always a chance for rescue. Thanks for joining. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, as well as leave a comment and let me know what you thought of everything. Also, if you have any story ideas or would like me to read any of your stories, please feel free to contact me at my email in the description. Once again, thank you for joining, and I'll catch you again next time here at Startle Volumes.